Welcome to Mountaineer Football Tonight, the weekly coaches show for Kings Mountain High School, brought to you by KMHS Sports and the Kings Mountain Touchdown Club.
Good evening, fans. Welcome to Mountaineer Football Tonight, here with Coach Herron. We're doing it a little different. Oh, welcome to this, Coach, like always.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
We're doing it a little different tonight. We're going to go right into the show here in just a moment. We don't have a highlight video this week. Jeff Johnson, who normally makes that for us, is tied up with church business. He has to leave tomorrow to go on a mission trip, and he is getting all of that ready. And actually, he's been getting it ready starting last weekend, right after the ball game, up through today, and then he had church duties tonight. So we don't have one for tonight because Jeff was not able to make it. Don't be mad at Jeff. We discussed it as a group and decided we wouldn't let Jeff do that, to take a little stress off of him so he can get ready to go serve the Lord on the mission trip. So, Coach, we're going to go right into it. Coach Herron, obviously you all know who he is, and we're glad that he's with us again. Coach, a huge atmosphere Friday night. We were just talking right before we came on about the count, how many we thought were here. We don't know yet, but we know there was a lot. And I was telling Coach Herron, in my time with Kings Mountain, I don't want to call it a career, but in my time with Kings Mountain, coaching and being a fan, as I told coaches, about the most fans I'd ever seen, which was good, which I knew Crest would bring a lot of people. And we did too. So first thing, Coach, before we break down the sides of the ball, with that atmosphere, obviously you knew what was up. There was a lot on the line. Things were happening in the game, before the game and all. How do you think, talk about how you think your team prepared for the game and the moment and the magnitude of it leading up to it and going into it?
Yeah, well, obviously we didn't prepare well enough, and you can't simulate what they saw as far as the crowd and that kind of thing. But that's, talking about it and with the players all week long, that's what you want to play in.
Right.
You want to play in games like that, and so it was a great atmosphere. But we didn't have a very good week, and then it showed Friday night. So we just weren't prepared.
I thought we had some success. We'll do what we always do. We'll break down all three sides, but I want to talk offensive first. I thought we had some success there. We can talk more about that in a minute. But one of the things that stood out to me, for the first time that I've seen all season, we had limited success on first down. It was hard, in watching it, it was hard. Well, I wouldn't say it's hard to watch. That's going to sound wrong. It looked to me like we were struggling to get ahead, to get in positive territory on first down, to where that put us behind a little bit. Were they doing anything differently that you thought they wouldn't do defensively?
No, and that's what's most discouraging about it, is that we just got outplayed, and we should have been able to run the ball some, but you got to give it to Crest. They played extremely hard and up front. They won that battle. I say it all the time. People think about, when they watch a football game, all the skill athletes and the quarterback and all that, but the game starts right up front. And we didn't win that battle, and that was the reason why you saw us stall a little bit offensively from what we're used to doing.
So I know Coach Wilson, because he's been here for several years before you guys came, and I know what he runs defensively, but I'm going to be honest, and maybe I just don't know it better, and I've not really paid that much attention. But I noticed the other night against us, and you tell me if you saw this on film before, one of the things that surprised me, he had all 11 guys within 8 yards of the ball.
Right.
He had his free safety only about 7 or 8 yards deep.
Yep.
Was that what you guys had seen? It looked to me like he was daring you to try to run.
No, it was just if you go back, I don't want to give away everything.
I know, you don't have to.
But if you go back and look at how many throws we have over 15 yards,
right,
and they're not very many. So that's what you do. I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm a defensive coach, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm say, hey man, I'm gonna make them beat us deep, and then if they beat us deep, then we'll have game plan too. But until they do, we're gonna stay right there in their face.
Yeah,
so I would have done the same thing, and I imagine we'll see the same thing this week.
Probably.
And if we get to next week, and after that, and after that, and after that.
Yeah, the same MO.
But
Until you can break it.
We have to be prepared for it.
Yeah, until you can break it. I do think something that came out the other night that I've not seen us do, I don't know what you guys call it, but what I would just, for a layman, the jumbo package. We put extra guys in and ran. We did have some success with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw there were a couple of different formations. It looked like one time was a split back, looked like a split back type wildcat, and then we put them over to one side, like a heavy set over on one side of the line. When we were down 26-14 and we were driving, and we'd gotten a first down with that package, but then we got back out of it. Did the coaches see something that made them think we should get out of it, or?
Well, yeah, they started to adjust to it.
Yeah.
It was something that we hadn't shown before, and then on top of that, we're very. See here.
I get what you're saying.
We're very limited in what we can do with it, and so once they start to adjust to it, then you're not getting an advantage there.
Sure.
So you go back to what you usually do.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
But I had to ask you, because the thing is, like, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm not going to hide from it. I said it on air, and it wasn't bad what I said. When we got out of that formation after we got the first down, someone lower down the line for me in the press box, and not complaining, they were like, "Man, we were having success. Why did we get out of it?" And I said it on air. I said, the coaches saw something. They know what they're doing. Basically is what I said. I said, we're going to trust that they saw something they had to adjust to. I mean, nobody was bashing it at all. I was curious myself, but I figured, because I've done this a long time. I'm not a guru, but I've done it long enough to know that good teams will adjust. And a lot of times good teams will adjust on the fly.
Well, you have to.
You have to.
I mean, that's what good teams do. You have to. And so, once we it's kind of like, it's one of those things, is how many times you want to go to the well, and after a while that thing will dry up. So you can't just keep doing it and do it, especially it looks good and you're gaining yardage, but since you're so limited in the things that you can do with it, over time you're not going to get it.
Correct.
And like I said, they started bringing an extra guy over, and it takes away what we're trying to get.
Yeah.
But it worked for the time that we did it.
And I thought it worked for you when you needed it to.
Yeah, it actually worked longer than we thought. We didn't think we would get that many snaps with it. That was a good adjustment and a good thing to go to, even out there in the middle of the field.
Well, I will say, before we go to the defensive side, as a fan and a dad and a former coach here and all that, I've been around a lot of teams, and I do believe it would have been really easy, especially on the offensive side, to fold 10.
Oh yeah.
It would have been easy for them to just say, "Gosh, we can't do anything. Everything's going wrong. Murphy's Law," but they didn't.
No, we didn't.
I was impressed with how, we and of course defense had to help with this. We held them right before the half. We came out, we score, and then we hold them and we score again. I mean, it's a 19-14 game, and I'm going to talk about officiating in a minute. I don't have a complaint, but I do want to make a comment. But I really do think I was proud of. We've talked about for a couple of weeks, responding to adversity.
Right.
They did not, when they were down 19-0. Could have easily just been like,
fold up.
To heck with this. We can't do anything right.
Right.
And we didn't let that discourage us. And I was very impressed with that. And again, I saw some things that we executed well. I know you were happy about some things too. Defensively, I thought, aside from the one touchdown that was a dime that they threw to Green right across the middle on that skinny post, I thought he didn't really affect us. The quarterback was the one that, and I knew it'd be one of the two, if not both.
Yep.
The thing that impressed me about the quarterback was him holding the ball at the mesh point as long as he did, and riding that thing and then taking. And that's hard to account for.
Yeah. It is, and we were disappointed. When we watched the film, we were disappointed in a few things that we had worked on through the week, and you got to play your techniques. You got to do what you're supposed to be, do what you're supposed to do, what you've been coached to do, and we didn't do that. We didn't do that near enough. Yeah. So that's what happens.
That's what happens. Special teams, obviously, I know we had to go forward. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I just was going to say that the 2 times in the red zone, there were some people that don't know what's happening.
Right.
They wondered why we went for it. I know why we went for it on 4th down. Because I'm going to be completely honest. I know the type of man you are. I've not known you a long time, but I know enough about you to know one of the big reasons you wouldn't have put Matt Rahm in that position. That's a lot of pressure.
No.
Because we're going to need him for other. You don't want to put him out there for a 35-yard field goal.
Yep.
25-yard field goal and destroy confidence.
And that's what I was going to say. Is you this is the thing that really bugs me about sports nowadays, is that I think people forget that these are high school kids.
Yep.
I mean, they are not grown-ups. They're not guys that are playing on Saturday. They're not guys that are getting paid millions of dollars to play on Sunday. They're regular old high school kids. Mm-hmm. And so to piggyback on what you were saying, you're exactly right. I was not going to put Rahm in a position where he could have felt. Everybody's feeling pressure,
sure.
But so much pressure that it's not even fair to him. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's trying to play soccer and he's trying to help us in football, and he's there when he can, and that just that was not the right thing to do.
No.
So we knew it coming in the week, and so we had already. It wasn't even a question. I didn't even think about it.
I don't blame you. Yeah. And then the second touchdown, I didn't realize this, but as we're driving on the second touchdown, I didn't realize Bryson Brown wasn't in the game.
Right.
And I told him on air, I looked down and Bryson's in there without his shoulder pads and his helmet, and I said, Bryson's not in the game. Now, Bryson is a tremendously gifted player.
Yep.
I mean, he was one of our leading receivers the last couple of years. He's been big for us on defense this year and maybe done a little offense. But one of the critical things he does that a lot of people don't pay attention to, he holds.
He's the holder.
He holds on PATs and field goals.
Yep.
And so my immediate thought was, if we score, we got a backup holder in there, and he did fine.
That's right.
But there again, that's more pressure. Like you said, there's pressure regardless.
Yeah.
But I knew
you don't want to put kids in that kind of situation where you just want to put them in a situation where they can be successful. Don't put them in a situation where they can't be successful.
You know, Coach, it's funny. Well, no, I shouldn't say that's the wrong word. It's not ironic that you brought up the factor of them being young men, because I'm going to speak to that later. Because I've thought a lot about that after what's happened and what I've seen and heard, and you're right. And I'm gonna talk about that later when we let you get out of here, because I know you got to go see your wife. Perfect. Officiating. I know that what happened Thursday night, I'm not going to talk about it. I really don't care. I've watched it, but I want to say, because of what happened Thursday, they were calling things more closely.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that they called something. I mean, I do believe that they called things on both sides. It wasn't one-sided. Yeah. There were things that were critical, I think, that happened to us regardless that maybe didn't get called that would have affected them as much, but I'm not going to talk about that. What I do want to say is what bothers me about that, and you can talk about it or not, I'm not trying to get a comment out of it if you don't want to say anything. What bothers me about that is I have no problem with them trying to maintain some type of control.
Definitely.
The issue I have with it is that what I have seen in the past is that when officials do that, they tend to go overboard.
Right.
And they tend to go, I'm talking ticky-tack.
Right.
And there's one specific one that I think hurt us more than any. And in speaking to the long snapper, mm-hmm. When that one was called on Tristan, right. According to my son, nothing was said.
Right.
He was talking to our boys, and he wasn't even talking badly.
Right.
And again, the official thought he heard what he heard. He had to do what he thought he had to do. That to me was an enormous penalty, because it backs us up on the kickoff.
Right.
We're kicking from the 25, and it only goes to the 40.
Yep.
I mean,
kicking. Yep.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I know what they were trying to do, and I understand that wholeheartedly. And my complaint was that You got to do it both ways.
Right.
And, and so when they called that penalty, I asked the official, like, what did he say? And he couldn't tell me.
Right.
And so I said, well, could you tell me, was he celebrating? Is that what the penalty was for? Or was he talking junk? And the only response I could get was, he's been causing trouble all night. So I just don't, that doesn't work for me. Right. Tell me what he said, because what he said is the reason why you're throwing the flag, and he couldn't tell me.
And then you can address it.
Right, and then I can address him,
And I don't want to.
Yeah, it was, but I mean, it's a tough situation for everybody. I just think you've got to do it both ways. I saw a lot of celebration out of them. They should have been celebrating a lot, but I didn't see a whole lot of flags. But it is what it is.
And I'm with you. I think you call what you see,
right,
or call what you hear.
Right.
You don't call what you speculate.
Exactly.
And that's the issue I have with it, because of what it did.
Yep.
So, Coach, I typed this question, but I don't know if you really want to answer it. But if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to.
All right.
Before we, and you can just go right into the takeaways, but what did the game teach you about the team?
Well, that's the takeaways.
And I just go right into them. I'll be fine.
Yeah. The first thing you've already touched on, is that our team didn't quit. Mm-hmm. We never stopped playing. We played hard, and we had some guys that were banged up and that actually went in the game that we were expecting not to play. Gash is the receiver for us, and the plan was not to use him. And when it wasn't going the way we wanted to, he actually wanted to play, and so we went ahead and played him. So our guys, that's a big takeaway for me, is knowing that our players understand that you gotta fight for it. You got to keep playing even when things are bad. However, the second takeaway is that and I wrote it down, that even when you know what you got to do in order to give yourself a chance, sometimes these kids, they either don't do it or won't do it, whichever one. So we watch a lot of film on the teams that we play, and there's certain things. I mean, this coming week, we've got to do some things that we haven't had to do this year, and the players have got to go do it. Mm-hmm. But then the other part of that is, all week long, I've told the players at the end of every practice, there's three things that I think are key to this week. One is the penalties. We gotta get rid of the penalties, quit hurting ourselves. We had 15, so that didn't work out. They didn't hear that part. We gotta limit the turnovers. We need to win the turnover battle, and they obviously didn't hear that, because we had 4 of those. And then we got to play physical. And even though I thought our guys played hard, I don't think we played that physical. I think that Crest played a little bit more physical than we did, and that was so we didn't get none of those 3, which is that second takeaway, is that they got to believe in what we're telling them. I mean, penalties are going to hurt you. They should know it by now. We've been preaching it to them. You got to be disciplined. Everything's not going to go your way, and just because it doesn't go your way, you can't do something dumb. So hopefully, as we get into the playoffs, they start to figure it out. Hey man, this crazy old guy is yelling at me all the time. He actually might know what he's talking about. I don't know. And then the third takeaway is getting beat hurts. I was in a funk for all weekend long. I didn't probably snap out of it till after practice Monday, and Tuesday was a better day. So I haven't lost a big game in quite a while. So I think it was 2018 was the last time I lost a big game, and it hurts.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Yeah.
But what I know about you and the staff, you've got a plan. Mm-hmm. And you've got a, you guys, it's not like you folded a tent either, and you guys put it up because you know what you've got to do ahead of you. You still got goals.
Oh yeah.
And when we get into Smoky Mountain after the break, there is still a lot you can accomplish.
Yeah.
And if things shake out the way we think they will shake out, playoff football is like March Madness. But if they shake out the way that we think they would shake out, even though you're going to be on the road some, you could end up being home if something happens. But
right.
You don't have an easy road by any means.
No.
but I think that we match up with some teams that we would potentially see, in my opinion, and what I know about this area. I think we match up with some of the teams that we could potentially see pretty well.
Right.
And I think it would help us, but it's one step at a time, one game at a time, like it's been all season. And Coach, I think I said this to you, and I'm gonna say it at the end when I do my little thing. The key is, and if we could ever figure out how to really do this, but the key is if you can convince those young men they are it's a fraction, as I said last week. You are 1/11th. There's 11 of you on the field at one time.
All right.
And in that unit, you are 1/11th. I know that's a weird fraction, but you are one of the 11. But we're expecting it to be 11 over 11, which is a perfect number, so to speak. All of you doing your job at the same time, right? And
that's what we try to preach. We tried to get that set up at the beginning of the year, really talking about units. You know, how we play as units, and it never really took. And so we've kind of pushed that to the side for now. We'll come back to it later on, but. You're exactly right. That's why it's a mentality.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mentality, and it takes time to develop, and it'll get better and better.
It will. So that's the recap of the game from Friday night. What we'll do is, like we always do, we'll take a sponsor break now, and we'll come back and talk about the first round playoff game against Smoky Mountain. Be back in just a few minutes.
Mountaineer football tonight is sponsored by HB Jones Appraisals, John Gamble and Carolina Golf, the Kings Mountain Family YMCA, Harris Funeral Home,
round game. Obviously, every round of the playoffs, it's a cliche, but it's win and go home, win or go home. Couple of things, I'll let you do them together. Do you like the status of the team, where we are, our mental focus and our preparation? And then what are your first impressions with Smoky Mountain?
Well, the first question is, and I just knock on wood, yes, the way that the team has been acting over the last couple weeks, and I don't know what it is, maybe it's Halloween candy or something, but they've been in a really good mood, and that usually when you see teams that are in good mood and they're in good spirits, then they usually play a little bit better. So we had a good day of practice Tuesday, and today we had our helmet only walkthrough type practice, which it's not a walkthrough. We don't do walkthroughs, but it was a good learning day, and I saw guys moving around pretty good, but also they were having fun with each other, and there was laughing, and which I don't. That ain't what we want to do. We want to go to practice and have a whole lot of laughing, but it's good for them to have a good time, and because that's why you play is to have fun. So
and they gotta like each other.
They gotta like each other, and that's taken some time too. But I think they're bonding a little bit better now than they have. And then the getting ready for Smoky Mountain, we watch film. They don't have the film that we received is not the greatest film. It doesn't really match up with what the teams that they played don't match up with us. So when you watch them on film and they're playing a team that runs a wing tee and they're playing a team that runs what they run Twins I, which is kind of really old school. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, it's like the old back in the old Clemson days and the 80s, but not the same scheme. Anyway, so when you get those kind of things and you're looking at teams and you're looking at film, try to figure out what they're doing, it's hard to do when the teams that they're playing against aren't in the spread, or they're not playing the 50 front, and Smoky Mountain runs an odd front defense, so it's like a 3-4, but it's a little bit different than what you would call a normal 3-4 team, and so or scheme. And so we've got my thing with them that I told the team today that the scary part for me is, number one, I think they're very strong. Based on what you can see on film, I think they are a strong team, like physically strong. Speed-wise, we should outplay them by speed. If that's the bottom line, it would be a great thing. I think we're faster than they are. I think it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell on film. But the other part of it is they're very well coached, and they know how to. And people ask me, like, how do you know a team's well coached? Well, if you watch a team that runs a gap scheme and they block down and their pullers are tight and they know how to kick people out the right way, or you watch their defense and the outside guys, like an outside linebacker or something like that, knows how to maintain leverage all the time and nothing getting outside of them, that kind of stuff, then they're coached pretty well. And we've played teams this year that they can't do that. I mean, they just didn't. They couldn't do it. Smoky Mountain does. They're very well coached, and that's going to that's going to have to play a part. We've got to be on our toes and make sure that we've got everything covered. And it's been tough. I mean, this week, just trying to get a scout team to be able to do what they do on both sides of the ball is not easy. Especially defensively. So anyway, we've got to go out and play hard and make sure that we're taking care of our responsibilities. And
I know you knew this was coming, but the weather's not helped either.
No,
not that you can't handle it, but when you go from high 70s, 80s on Monday to 50 degrees and the wind blowing on Tuesday, that's a shock to the system when you're standing outside.
There's no doubt.
And that's not an excuse, but I mean, it's hard to get adjusted to that too. But it's probably going to be cool the rest of the time. And if you're playing in the cold weather, that's a good thing.
Yep.
I'll also say, Coach, 2 years ago, we were in this situation where a team from the mountains came down here, in the first round, Franklin, and everybody was like, oh yeah, man, y'all will walk the dog on them. It'll be no problem. They're slow. You're faster than them. We literally had to drive down the field on the last drive of the game and win the game. And we did, but we were in a dogfight.
Right.
And so you're right. I mean, they don't want to go home, and be finished with the season anymore than we do. And so it'll be tough. Yeah,
it's going to be tough. And it's hard to get your players to understand that. And then again, like I've said, and I'll say, usually you like to show them film, hey man, here's film. We're showing you they're a pretty good team. And we just don't have a lot of good film to show them, and so that's another thing that kind of makes it tough. So, and all the people are going to look at, players are going to look at, hey, they're 4-6. How good can they be? Well, sometimes that doesn't equate.
No, but I will tell you, your seniors were on that team 2 years ago that played Franklin.
You're right,
and they will vividly remember, because a lot of your seniors were starting as sophomores.
I love my guys, but we had 18 penalties last week, and we told them not to have that many penalties this week, and we had 15. Yeah. So I'm all for you, but I think our guys have a short memory, very short memory. I hope whether they can remember back to that, frankly, I don't know. But
well, I hope we're not, but I agree with you there. Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that they will, but I'm with you on that. I get it. They're players to watch for them. Like who stands out to you?
Well, they've got a running back who also plays linebacker, number 15. He's a big, stocky-looking kid that can go. He's a good player. Their quarterback's a pretty good player, also can run, and and then they've got. I think there's another linebacker that's really that stood out to us on film. But again, like I said, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell, but they've got some good players, and the scariest thing for me is their offensive line. Like I said, they seem like, watching them on film, they seem like they're very strong. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my biggest concern right now. They run good stuff, like they just run the old belly play, which is my favorite play in football. It's tough to stop. They run the quick fullback trap because they're in an eye, and that's a tough play to stop if you do it right. And so we've got to be smart, and our linebackers are going to have to do a really good job of reading. It's like old school. That's why as soon as we saw it, and Coach Carroll started looking at it, and I looked at it and said, man, that looks like old school football. And he said, and we talked about how linebackers need to read this week. And you got to read it like the old school days. And it's going to be interesting to see if our guys can stay in there and keep mashing because that's what's coming.
Well, they're like those teams. A lot of those teams, they run an offense that's geared to their personnel, and they do it well.
Right.
And that's when they're dangerous. Teams like that are dangerous.
That's right.
Because as you said, and with their blocking schemes and the way they move and knowing how to hold leverage and where to be, they could cause you problems.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we'll talk about the time and stuff this week. That's Smoky Mountain here at home Friday night at 7:30. We'll take a sponsor break and be back in just a minute and talk about some standout plays and players from last week. Be right back.
Mountaineer Football Tonight is sponsored by HB Jones Appraisals, John Gamble and Carolina Golf, the Kings Mountain Family YMCA, Harris Funeral Home,
All right, welcome back. We're going to do our sponsor. No, good gravy. Not sponsor. I saw the word sponsor and read it. That was dumb. Coach and I, well, no. Again, I misspoke. I didn't decide this. He's the head man. Coach said, and I agree, that's what I meant to say, that we don't give players of the week when we have a loss. But he does want to recognize some things that stood out to him. And while I'm talking about recognizing things, I do want to put a plug in one more time. I put in shameless plugs for Diet Sun Drops. Coach doesn't have one today because he left his at the house that his lovely wife bought for him. And I've been told that some are being brought here. The season's drawing to an end pretty soon, maybe 6 weeks from now or so, but we'd love to have some drinks from you. In all seriousness though, Coach, let's talk about some players that, or some things, even plays or whatever you want to do, that stood out for you last week.
Yeah, and I don't want to take away anybody's thunder, but Gutter Guys is our sponsor, and
yes,
and we appreciate them.
I think they'd understand,
but
Jimbo would understand.
That's just not my way. So, but offensively this week, just going down the list, this is how I say it. Is we had some guys that did some good stuff, but and you can pick anyone you want that you want to call the player of the week. But the player of the games, they're all on the other team because we didn't get to win. So Robert Kendrick, he had 57 yards rushing. Josiah Hill had a touchdown, and those were good. Teddy Jeffries caught a couple or three passes for 66 yards. And scored a touchdown.
The touchdown that he scored off the screen, beautiful.
Yeah, and the screens were working for us. That's how hard they were coming at us. And JoJo, I think, had a screen that went for some yardage. And then, but Teddy, he had 66 yards and a touchdown receiving. And it's good to have Teddy back. We're trying to get him into the fold a little more, like he needs to be, but being out for so long. But it's good to have him back. So offensively, those three guys did a really good job. Defensively, Thomas Fair, he led the team in production points, but just to tell you how poorly we played, and I'll just say it, he had 34 production points. And so usually on a good night, production points are going to range somewhere in the 60, 70 range, and we've had kids that had over 100 in production points so far this year, but Thomas led the defense with 34, which that's This is not very good. 7 tackles and a sack, which is good. Eli Lipscomb, he did a good job. 8 tackles, a sack, and a quarterback pressure. And Jason Melton led the team in tackles, which he usually does, with 9. But again, nothing really stands out. You know, there was no stats that really stood out on defense, and that'll just go back and show you that we didn't play really well. The only special teams that I thought was, I shouldn't say the only, two guys on special teams that did something that's a little bit different. Kamari Howes did a great job on kickoff returns. He had one that was 60 yards.
He did.
And
set the drive up.
That's right. And but he had 3 kickoff returns for 103 yards. We'd love to see him get the ball more out in space. Even though he plays the defense for us, he can fly, but it's just a matter of getting him the ball. And then Zolo stepped in for us and took over the punting.
I thought he punted well.
Yep, and it may, a lot of people probably didn't notice it, but we changed up how we did our punt team. That was one of the things that I thought we did well. We said that going in the game we wanted to keep them from being able to catch the punts and return them. And so if you watch it, we kind of put in a little half rugby punt, and Zolo had, he kind of rolled out. He held the ball for as long as he could, and then punted the ball to give our coverage time to get down and keep them from getting good returns. And they did a really good job with that. So those 2 guys would be special team standout players for the week.
Right. I think they did. I think all those are fine. And like we said, I mean, there were some good things. To be honest with you, and I don't mean to make light of it, I had forgotten about that until you brought up Teddy doing well. How beautiful that play was that he made when on the screen that he scored on. Yeah. And like you said, I thought Robert ran the ball well. Zolo definitely punted well. We had and in Howes with return. Coach, are we? Speaking of that, I meant to ask you, sir, are we decently healthy?
Yeah, we were worried about Bryson, but he's back and he's fine. We've taken it easy this week, but he'll be able to play. And then C.J. Howser, we were worried about him, but he ended up what we thought might be something major was actually just kind of like a bruise, but it was on his jaw, so it was a place where you have to worry about it. Yeah. So, but he came back on Monday and he said, they told him it was just a bruise, and he was moving his mouth, and so but I still didn't think he would be ready to go. And he said, "Oh yeah, Coach, I'm practicing today."
I said, "Hey, I like that attitude.
That's what we need. Yeah. That's what we need."
So, Coach, we'll go to the last one. We've got a question. It's actually a couple. It's from one of our fans, and I'm pretty sure, please don't get mad at me if I get this wrong, because I was trying to find the email. I've got the question. I think it was from Mike Smith, and I probably didn't get that right. But he says, first of all, let me say, I just copied it exactly like it was on the email. He says, first, let me say I'm glad Coach Herron is here. I think the coach is an absolutely phenomenal football coach. It was a phenomenal hire for KM Athletics. My question for Coach is this. I've heard Coach speak repeatedly on the importance of leadership, team, and trying to get all of the players to buy in and pull in the same direction as a team and program. What about the coaches? Do you think that you have complete buy-in from the coaches and all of our coaches, and that all of our coaches are pulling in the same direction? He says, I think that it is just as important for coaches to be bought in and pulling in the same direction to win a championship also. Your thoughts? Yeah,
that's a great question and a great point, and that's hard. That's one of the hard things about coming in and starting a new job. When I got here, we had. I wanted to have 2 coordinators. We spoke about that before on the show.
Right.
And so, of course, getting Coach Carroll was awesome. He's one of the best defensive coordinators that I've ever known, and I've worked with. And so, getting him here was great. But then, who we were going to get to work with him, we just didn't know.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a learning experience. And so we bring the guys that we have, you know, and you won't want to go through all of them. But to answer the question, I think all of our defensive coaches really respect Coach Carroll. And I think all of our defensive coaches understand, just like I did when I was young, that you can learn a lot from a guy like Coach Carroll. So the defensive side of the ball, I think we have very good buy-in. The question becomes, where do we go from here? What can we do to make it better?
Right.
And so it's really not a question of, from a defensive standpoint, it's not a question of buy-in. It's a question of who can get it done.
Right.
And so that's not a question for right now. We don't have this isn't the time to worry about that. We've got to go. We've got our staff, and that's where we've got to go. Offensively, it's the same way. When we had the opportunity to get Coach Bolton, it was a great hire. But again, he walked through the door, and everybody else underneath him, he inherited.
Right.
And so, and I believe that from our offensive coaches, the buy-in has been really good. And you know, when you have somebody like Coach Cruz, which is awesome, Cruz, he understands football extremely well, and so he can just fall straight into what Coach Bolton wants, and he understands it at an incredible pace, which is good. And then we brought, you know, Coach McManus came with us, and really he did this out of he's a volunteer. He's not getting paid. He's doing it as a favor to me, just because he knew that first year I was going to need help, and that's why he's here. One of the greatest coaches that I've ever worked with, and so I know that they are bought in, and so and I think I've never really questioned anybody about buy-in, you know, like whether or not they bought into what we're trying to do. The question that I have is, do we have guys who don't know how to assimilate to what we're doing to make it the way that we want it to? And so really, to answer your question, if we have a guy who doesn't buy in, if I have a coach on my staff who doesn't buy in to what I'm trying to get done, he won't be here. Now, because when you're saying buy in, you're talking about buying into what we're talking about doing. If we have a coach that's on staff who may not quite know everything they need to know to be a great football coach, then it's my job to either teach him or replace him.
Right.
But you can't do it in the middle of the season.
No.
So we're not like the NFL and college teams.
Not the Raiders.
Right, exactly. And so we got to go with what we have. And I think we're doing a really good job, you know, from a coaching staff point. But the coaches here are not used to what we've done. They've told us that. You know, we're used to, and I know, like me, Coach Carroll and I, we're used to being in the office 8 hours on Saturday and 8 hours on Sunday. I mean, and it's just that just doesn't fly here yet. And so
I like that word.
That part is got to come if we want to get to that. You know, when you get into a meeting on Saturday or Sunday, you know, when you walk in there, you should see your whole staff sitting there at a table, looking at a screen, and guys talking and explaining and getting a picture of our opponent, and then understanding the game plan and so forth and so on. We haven't gotten to that point yet. You know, I would have to ask the coordinators, like, hey, how many times have y'all met as a full staff on the weekends? And I could probably tell you maybe once on both sides. And that's not going to get us where we got to go. So that's a discussion to be held after the season's over, and it will be. I've got my list.
I always did that too. Did you go into it knowing you were going to give that type of autonomy?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. Giving them the reins that's the way I work, and that's not a problem. That hasn't been a problem at all. coming in not knowing what the process would be to hire new coaches
Right.
and get people on board and that was more of the question. And that's just something that we'll work through. I mean, it takes time, but the other part of it that I'm just not used to is that you have a lot of part-time guys. You have a lot of volunteer guys. You have a lot of guys who don't work at the school. You have to make a staff out of guys, and it's when you look at it and you go to the other schools, everybody else is doing the same thing. So it's not like it's like just us, but it's just something I'm not used to. Yeah. I'm used to having 16 supplements, and I can take the supplements and split them and get 2 coaches out of 1, and so even if it's a small amount of money, if you're paying them something, then you can expect something.
Right.
If you're not paying them, it's hard to tell a guy, hey, you're a volunteer guy and I appreciate you, but see you in the meeting at Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, and we'll send you home about 4. You just can't do it.
It's a little different across the border, Coach.
It's a little bit different. It is a little bit different.
That's one of the things I've noticed and I've learned in my brief stint there across the border. There are more supplements. There are more positions. It's not that it's not valued up here. It's just different. And see, to me, that you're talking about, I'm used to that because except for right now, the whole gist of my career was coaching in North Carolina, and everywhere we went, or whatever staff we'd go against, it was the same. So it's kind of, we kind of knew. Right. But now you've got the opposite of me. So you've come from that, and now you're here, and I've come from this and went there, and we can both see that perspective, those perspectives. It is different, but you do have to. It takes a while to get your mark on things.
Yep.
When I came here back in 2007, I took over softball for Suzanne Grayson, who she played in 3 consecutive state championships, and she won 2 of them.
Right.
And you want to talk about a tough position to fill.
That's right.
And so the first thing I did is I met with her for hours about what to do. And there were a lot of things in that first season I didn't change. And honestly, there were things that she taught me that I never changed, that stayed part of Kings Mountain softball the whole time through my career.
Right.
But there were things that I did change, and like you're saying, little by little I did it, and then I saw. And so you've got the right approach, and we know that you're doing it behind the scenes of what you need to do, and the staff's there. The only other question I'd have would maybe think, do you reserve the right to overturn stuff? Like, so if you see something happening offensive or defensively?
Oh, yes.
I figured you did.
Yes. And really, honestly, because, when things go bad, that's everybody wants to point a finger. They can point everybody's finger needs to be pointed at me, because everything that happens, I'm responsible for. Mm-hmm. So, we got 18 penalties against Ashbrook. We had 15 penalties last week, and that means that we're not very disciplined. So we've got to, and whether or not we can get disciplined in the short amount of time we have left, I don't know. But by next year, we've got to be more disciplined. Mm-hmm. So those things will happen. I like to call myself the fixer. I like to fix things. So we'll figure out a method of fixing as we go.
We'll call you the equalizer, like Denzel Washington. Just don't take you. You can set your watch like he does in the movies. He gives himself so much time to take people out.
Right.
All right, Coach. Well, I'm gonna let you get out of here. I know your wife and your son want to see you. I appreciate your time. Good luck Friday against Smoky Mountain.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to see you as always.
Thank y'all.
All right, we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Mountaineer football tonight is sponsored by HB Jones Appraisals, John Gamble and Carolina Golf, the Kings Mountain Family YMCA, Harris Funeral Home,
Drew, we're going to do this week at Mountaineer, right? First?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So we're going to put up the graphic for this week in Mountaineer Nation. We'll show you there. So today, there are no events scheduled except for this wonderful coaches show put on to you by the Great guy over there, Drew Fulton, and the Touchdown Club, brought to you by them and our wonderful sponsors. Tomorrow on the 2nd, there are no events. Reason that is, a lot of people don't know, we're in the middle of transitioning seasons. We're getting ready to go into our winter season, so that's why it doesn't look like things are going on. There are some practices starting for some of those teams. Varsity football will be at home Friday night against Smoky Mountain at 7:30. Saturday, cross country is at the state cross country meet up in Kernersville. And how about this? Well, it's a good luck to that team and those individuals. I'm going to say that first for those young men vying for that on the state level. And how about our volleyball team? They won a tough match last night against the number 1 team, North Iredale, and they are going to the state championship on Saturday in Raleigh. That is awesome. So I hope those ladies bring home that championship on Saturday. No events scheduled for Monday the 6th or Tuesday the 7th. Let's talk about the info for the game Friday night. We'll show you there. It's what you've always known and what we've done. You can buy your ticket ahead of time. I'm assuming the tickets will go on sale by Friday. It's as it always is. Ticket Spicket is where you can buy that. They can be purchased online or at the gate. As always, gates open at 6. The game starts at 7:30. Our broadcast pregame starts at 6:30 on YouTube, and kickoff, like I just said, is at 7:30. We want to give you this graphic or show you this graphic for the volleyball team. This is last night for them winning in their regional final. They are Western Region champions. Congratulations, lady. That's a good-looking group right there. And you can see some of the fans on the floor with them, but also the coaches around the team as well. Congratulations to the Lady Mountaineers for winning that great match last night and winning throughout the playoffs. And as I just said, now heading out up to NC State for the big game Saturday. Times have not been released yet. I think Jeff told us this morning in a text message they will draw for times. So as soon as those are out and published, we will make sure, well, I won't make sure, but Coach Bridges will make sure they are put on social media for you there. Before I turn you loose and do the things I always do, I want to do something really quick. I know most of you were here Friday night, and I know that you probably saw the game, of course, and you were disappointed in the loss, as we all were. But I also wanted you to remember that 2 things happened Friday night to put things in perspective. Right after the teams crossed midfield and shook hands, one of the coaches, Coach Nally from Crest, I don't know him personally, had a medical emergency. We had to clear the field. At the time, we thought he had a heart attack. They were performing CPR on the field. Luckily, he did not, but it was bad enough to keep him in the hospital for several days. And luckily, he has recovered. I don't know that he's recovered completely, but he is doing better than he was Friday, last I heard. We also had one of our volunteer camera people get hit on the sideline, and she also had to go to the hospital, had a concussion, bruised up pretty bad, hurt pretty badly, and of course she's out here for free. You know, she's given of her time and her effort and her energy. And I say all that to say that needs to be our perspective in thinking about that, because at the end of the day, it is just a game. And we do have people and lives involved in things, and people giving of their time and their effort. But when it comes down to it, there are bigger things to worry about. The health of our loved ones, the health of our friends, the health of our family is way more important than a ball game. And I hope that you can keep that perspective. And that's what I wanted to leave you with. As Coach said, remember, there is no one that wants to win any worse than these coaches and those players. And those players are kids. They're young men. And they're doing the best they can. Negativity that's hurled at them doesn't help anybody. And it doesn't help whoever is even saying that. So I want to challenge us moving forward to be as positive as possible. I know that's not always easy, but I want to say that because I was held accountable too for something I said on air earlier in the year. And I'm glad one of my brothers held me in check. And I'm not holding you in check. I'm just saying I want us to be more accountable. You got to remember something. In the last 24 games, this team is 22-2. There are teams in this region that haven't won 22 games in the last 5 years. And yes, I do want to keep winning, and I do want to win big. And it's okay to be frustrated when we don't. But I want us to channel that energy in a positive way, not in a negative way. Never at a player and never at a coach. Because I will tell you something. You're around their family and friends in the stands, and you definitely wouldn't want that said about your child either. We want to be positive. Football's emotional. Football's a momentum game. In order for us to maintain good momentum, I pray that we can do that together and move forward. If you're angry over something, that's okay, but let's focus it in the right place, because here's the thing: encouraging our young men to work hard and our fans to be positive is what's going to carry us the most or the farthest. Keeping the main thing is the main thing, and knowing that Mountaineer Nation can be better because we're better will be a great thing to do. I thank you for listening to my rant. Believe me when I say that I'm preaching to myself also, because I had someone keep me in check too. We need positivity, and we need support, we need encouragement. Because I'll tell you something, if you look at the way this bracket is set up, we've got to win one game at a time. But being where we are can bode well for us if our boys will buy in and play hard and do the things they're supposed to do. I've got a strong feeling that if we put the team out there that I think we're going to put out there, we're going to have a chance to have several more of these shows and continue on for several more weeks. And that's my hope and prayer. Aside from that, I appreciate you watching tonight. I want you to have a wonderful week, a blessed week. Enjoy your family, enjoy your friends. Come in Friday night watching the game with good expectations. Come in supportive. Come in ready to chant for that team in a good and positive way. We appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Be blessed.
Mountaineer Football Tonight is sponsored by H.B. Jones Appraisals, John Gamble and Carolina Golf, the Kings Mountain Family YMCA, Harris Funeral Home,